Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. It finally happened, and now the boxing world is split. Was it a clear win for Eubank, a robbery, or something in between? I rewatched the full fight, round by round, in slow motion, scoring every frame using the 4 official judging criteria. Clean landed punches, effective aggression, ring generalship, and defense. No bias, no BS, just the truth. Let's break down who really won Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. Want a full breakdown of how I judge each round? I've laid it all out on the screen. Pause if you're a detail junkie. I'm not reading it. Under 1, clean punching. Here you can see all the punches from either fighter. Eubank Jr. landed 13 clean punches, whereas Conor Benn landed 11 clean punches. So in judging clean punching in round 1, 10-9 in favor of Chris Eubank Jr. Effective aggression. Although Benn had the overall greater aggressive posture, Eubank Jr. was able to step away from most of it while still remaining in range to launch his own aggression. The greatest example of this is that Eubank Jr. was making subtle calculated moves to avoid Benn's aggression, whereas Benn's defensive moves to avoid Eubank Jr.'s aggression were much more elaborate. He adapted relatively well, but he was the one having to adapt. That being said, for aggressiveness, I gave 10 points to both fighters. For effectiveness, 10 points to Eubank Jr., 9 points to Benn. Ring generalship. Eubank controlled action and tone for most of the round. Benn had many fast attempts to dart in and out to mount his own attack, but Eubank Jr. seemed ready to deal with most of it while maintaining his pace. The tone was Eubank's reserved and calculated reactions to Benn's ultra-fast in and out attacks, while Benn made large movements to avoid Eubank's attacks while still being hit slightly more. Eubank had more success implementing his composed plan than Benn did in implementing his energetic. In scoring ring generalship, I gave control of action and tone to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9. Let's talk defense. Take a look at your screen and look at all of the defensive maneuvers performed by each man. Benn was doing more defense because Eubank Jr. was doing more offense. And so as we judge each of the components of defense, I gave blocking from the high guard 8-7 in favor of Benn, ducking 10-7 in favor of Benn, bobbing and weaving 10-8 in favor of Benn, parrying 8-7 in favor of Benn, blocking in ways that aren't the high guard block 8-7 in favor of Benn, footwork meaning stepping away from punches 10-9 in favor of Benn, and clinching 9-8 in favor of Eubank Jr. All 4 criteria taken together, the algorithm gives us 9.543 points for Eubank Jr., 9.105 points for Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system. Round 1 is 10-9 Eubank Jr. And as we go through this fight, we're going to look at the running score that I have as compared to the 3 judges at ringside, Lee Every, Kieran McCann, and Mark Bates. Let's take a look after 1. So I gave that round to Eubank Jr. All 3 judges also gave that round to Eubank Jr. 10-9. 1-2. Clean punching. Have a look at your screen where we'll see that Eubank Jr. landed 19 clean punches in round 2 to Conor Benn's 10. You can pause the screen if you want to look at them in detail here. So in scoring clean punching, I gave it 10-9 to Chris Eubank Jr. Effective aggression. Benn was the more consistent aggressor, establishing a fast pace. His effectiveness in causing Eubank to come out of his game plan was limited, though, because of Eubank Jr.'s reaction and handling of this. But they were fighting at the aggressiveness level that Benn was initiating. So that being said, I gave aggressiveness 10-9 to Conor Benn, effectiveness of aggression 10-9 to Chris Eubank Jr. Ring generalship. Eubank Jr. was punching aggressively as Benn was on his way in, and although he didn't initiate the pace, he controlled it when it was presented to him during much of the round. I wouldn't say he controlled the tone, though. He didn't have much offense unless it was to stop Benn's advance. And therefore, in judging ring generalship, I gave control of the action 10-9 to Chris Eubank Jr., but control of the tone 10-9 to Conor Benn. Let's talk defense. Once again, you see lots of varied defense from Conor Benn, as presented on the screen here, and Chris Eubank Jr. as well, but not quite as much defending from Eubank. I think he's performing more of the offense and less of the defense at this point. You can pause the screen if you want to go into those details. As we look into each of the different categories of defense, I gave 7 points to both men for high guard, meaning they didn't do it at all, 10 points to both men for ducking, which means they did an equal amount of lots of ducking, bobbing and weaving 10-8 in favor of Conor Benn, 9-7 to Conor Benn for parrying, 8-7 to Conor Benn for blocking, 10-9 to Conor Benn for footwork, and 10-8 to Conor Benn for defensive clinching. Overall, a better defensive round for Conor Benn. And as we take the 4 scoring criteria together, it's a very razor-close 9.350 points for Chris Eubank Jr. to 9.279 for Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system. A razor-thin edge for Chris Eubank Jr. in round 2, 10-9. So as we have a look at that running score, I now have the fight after 2, 20-18. Judge at ringside, Lee Every, has it also 20-18 after giving the round to Chris Eubank Jr. Kieran McCann gave the round to Conor Benn and has it 19-19, and so does Mark Bates. He also gave the round to Conor Benn 10-9 and has the fight also 19-19. Now, we need to judge each round individually, but for those of you buffs who want to know the running punch landed total, I'm keeping track of that for you as well, even though we don't use it as one of the 4 scoring criteria. So in this round, Chris Eubank landed 19 punches to Conor Benn's 10, a total of 32-21 in Eubank's favor for the fight. So round 3, clean punching. This one was a low output round. As you can see, Eubank Jr. with 9 landed punches cleanly, and Benn only 5. So both with low counts, but Eubank with more, and that's why Chris Eubank Jr. gets the clean punching score of 10-9 for round 3. Effective aggression. aggression. Ben was more aggressive for more of the round and caused Eubank Jr. to clinch in an effort to avoid danger multiple times, even though he had good control and counterpunching. Ben started and ended aggressively with sharp, evasive motion in the middle of the round as well. And so for effective aggression, I'm giving control of aggression and effectiveness to Conor Benn in round 3. Ring generalship. Ben set the pace and tone for the majority of the round. Eubank Jr. handled it well and actually landed more punches, but Ben was dictating when the interactions versus rest periods would happen. Eubank Jr. counterpunched only when the pace and tone was imposed on him. And so that being said, I'm giving ring generalship, controlling of action and tone both to Conor Benn 10-9. Let's talk defense. Same old, same old. A lot more defensive maneuvers from Conor Benn than Eubank Jr. You can see them listed here on the screen. Pause if you want to go into all those details. For scoring the high guard, I gave both men 8 points, ducking 10-9 for Conor Benn, bobbing and weaving 10-9 for Conor Benn, parrying 8 points to both men, blocking 8-7 to Conor Benn, footwork 10-8 to Conor Benn, and clinching 9 points to both men. That being said, averaging the 4 scoring criteria, Conor Benn gets 9.5 points for round 3, Chris Eubank Jr. 9.157 points, and therefore it's a 10-9 round for Conor Benn. Having a look at the running scoring, I now have it 29-28 after 3. Judge at ringside Lee Every has it also 29-28 after giving that round to Conor Benn. Kieran McCann also gave the round to Conor Benn and has it 29-28 Ben. Mark Bates gave the round to Conor Benn and also has it 29-28 Conor Benn. Now again, if we want to look at the punches landed, 9-8 in this round. Cumulative total, 41-26 in Eubank's favor. Round 4. Clean punching. A bit of a disparity here. Eubank Jr. landing 23 clean punches as you see listed here and Conor Benn landing 12. And therefore the clean punching score is 10-9 in favor of Chris Eubank Jr. in round 4. Effective aggression. Although Eubank Jr. diffused Ben's aggression a bit as the round progressed, both fighters were effective when they were aggressive. Ben started that way, was held at bay for a while, and then ended aggressive. Eubank Jr. was happy to throw first many times in this round and was quite accurate. And so I gave aggressiveness and effectiveness of that aggression to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9. Ring generalship. Eubank Jr. was landing many more punches in the first 2/3 of this round and was talking to Ben, perhaps trying to rub it in or rattle him, I don't know. Eubank Jr. equaled Ben's pressing tone in this round, stymied many attacks by grabbing and held Ben at bay more as the round went on, controlling the action until Ben must have realized that he needed to land much more and started doing so. And so that being said, for ring generalship, controlling of both action and tone, I gave them to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9. Let's talk defense. Lots more defense by Conor Benn in this round than Chris Eubank Jr., who had his fair share of defensive maneuvers. You can see them all listed here and when they have. And so therefore, for the high guard blocking, I gave it to Conor Benn 8-7, ducking 10-8 Conor Benn, bobbing and weaving 10-9 Chris Eubank, parrying 8-7 Conor Benn, blocking other than high guard blocks 9-7 Conor Benn, footwork 9-8 Conor Benn, and clinching 9-8 Conor Benn. So overall, a more robust defensive round for Conor Benn. Taking all the 4 categories together, Chris Eubank Jr. has 9.571 points in my algorithm, 8.971 points for Conor Benn. Quite a disparity there. A 10-9 round for Chris Eubank Jr. As we have a look at that running score, after 4, I have the fight 39-37, Chris Eubank Jr. Judge at ringside Lee Every gave the round to Chris Eubank, as did the other 2 judges as well. Lee Every has it 39-37, Kieran McCann has it 38-38 even, and Judge Mark Bates also has it 38-38 even. Chris Eubank Jr. landed 23 punches to Conor Benn's 12. The running total now 64 for Eubank, 38 for Conor Benn. Round 5. Clean punching. As we can see here, a much closer round. Eubank Jr. lands 17 clean punches in round 5. Conor Benn lands 14, and you can see them listed here and when they had. And therefore, clean punching score is 10-9 in favor of Chris Eubank. Effective aggression. I have to say that both men were very effectively aggressive in this round. Eubank Jr. has smoother motion, whereas Ben darts in and out at lightning speeds, but both of them held their ground in the middle of the ring for most of the round. So that being said, in scoring effective aggression for aggressiveness and effectiveness of that aggression, I gave both men 10 points in both categories. Ring generalship. Both fighters controlled action and tone in their own way. They both clearly wanted to fight in the middle of the ring, initiate offense, and defend responsive. Eubank Jr. landed a few more punches, but neither was taken off their game plan by the other. Ben kept coming forward even after he was shoulder blocked to the ropes. After watching him in 25% slow-mo to count punches landed, I watched at full speed to judge ring generalship, and some of the defensive moves Ben are making are impossibly fast. That being said, for ring generalship and controlling action and tone, again, I gave both men 10 points in both categories. Let's talk defense. Same old again. Ben with a lot more variety of defense than Eubank Jr. Eubank standing his ground in the middle of the ring, whereas Ben is being more in trying to avoid the offense coming at him. So in judging defense, I gave the high guard 9-8 to Ben, ducking 10-9 for Ben, bobbing and weaving 10-9 for Conor Benn, parrying 10-8 to Ben, blocking 9-7 for Ben, footwork 10-8 for Ben, and clinching 10-8 for Eubank. Taking all 4 categories together, a pretty close round here, 9.686 points for Chris Eubank Jr. and 9.586 points for Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system, 10-9 to Chris Eubank Jr. And as we take a look at that running score, I gave the round to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9, as as did all three judges. I have the fight now 49-46 in favor of Eubank Jr. So does judge at ringside Lee Every. Judges at ringside McCann and Bates have the fight 48-47 in favor of Eubank Jr. at this point. And as we said, the punches landed were 17-14 in Eubank's favor, a running total 81-52 Eubank. Round 6. Clean punching. A huge disparity in this round, as you can see. Eubank Jr. landing 24 clean punches to Conor Benn's 8. And you can see the variety of them and when they happened here on the screen. Eubank Jr. actually tripled the number of clean punches landed by Conor Benn and wins this category 10-7. Effective aggression. Although both fighters were aggressive at initiating offense, Benn was missing quite a bit and Eubank was not only holding his ground but pressing a bit forward, especially in the first minute and the last 40 seconds. His aggression had more of an effect on stopping Benn from what he was trying to accomplish with his aggression than vice versa. Aggressiveness and effectiveness 10 points to 9 in favor of Chris Eubank Jr. Ring generalship. Although, as we will see in the defense discussion, Benn does quite a lot to avoid punches defensively, the kind of timing that Eubank Jr. was using with his jab to the head made it land with astounding repeatability. That's the one punch that is giving Benn problems, and it's giving Eubank Jr. all the advantages in controlling action. So that being said, control of action and tone for ring generalship 10-9 in favor of Chris Eubank Jr. Let's talk defense. Here they're actually pretty close. Eubank Jr. did just about as much defending as Conor Benn did. You can see each defensive move outlined here and the time in which they had. If we score them in individual categories, though, the high guard gave 9 points to both men, ducking 10-9 in Eubank's favor, bobbing and weaving 10 points to both men, parrying 8 points to both men, blocking 8-7 in Benn's favor, footwork 10-9 Benn, and clinching 10-9 Eubank. Taking all 4 categories together, a giant disparity in this round, unfortunately. 9.8 points, almost a perfect round for Chris Eubank Jr. to 8.4 in the algorithm for Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system 10-9 Eubank. And as we have a look at the running score again, I now have the fight 59-55 after giving that round to Eubank Jr. All 3 judges at ringside gave the round to Eubank Jr. as well. Judge Lee Every also has it 59-55, Judge McCann 58-56 in Eubank's favor, and Mark Bates also 58-56 Eubank. As we look at the punches landed again, it was 24-8 in favor of Eubank, and now the running total 105 punches landed for Eubank to 60 for Conor Benn. Round 7. Clean punching. Again, a huge disparity in this round. Eubank Jr. landing 36 clean punches, and you can see them all listed here. Conor Benn landing only 12 clean punches. And as we're starting to see these large numbers landed by Eubank, I can just give you an idea of what I've seen in the other fights that I've covered so far on my channel. I would say anything in the single digits is bad. Anything in the teens is good to okay. Anything in the 20s is very good. Anything in the 30s I've rarely seen. And there's some rounds later where Eubank Jr. hits the 40s, which I don't think I've seen before on any fight that I've judged thus far. Clean punching, again, he triples the output, 10-7, Eubank Jr. Effective aggression. Benn is noticeably flinching in anticipation of the jab to the head and still can't seem to avoid it. He was aggressive for most of the round, but was only effective for a 30-second period at the beginning and a 30-second period at the end. Eubank Jr. matched his aggression during those spurts and diffused the aggression by landing many punches on Benn's way in. Eubank was aggressive when he needed to be, but not throughout the round. However, he was more effective. So effective aggression, I gave aggressiveness 10-9 in favor of Benn and effectiveness 10-9 in favor of Eubank. Ring generalship. Eubank Jr. is able to lure Benn in, using his energy and aggression against him and pinpoint many landed punches. He controlled the action even though Benn was initiating it more. Benn controlled the tone at the beginning and end of the round, but Eubank Jr. controlled the tone for the majority of the round by slowing the pace to controlled, accurate punching rather than the brawl that Benn successfully implemented in spurts. So in terms of ring generalship, I gave it to Chris Eubank Jr. for action and tone 10-9. Let's talk defense. Benn is defending a lot and Eubank Jr. defending less because he's punching more, frankly. And clean punches, as you've seen in my scoring mechanism, do have a heavier weight than defense, although not by a large margin, but enough to make a difference if you're spending more of your time landing clean punches than you are defending. That being said, the high guard, Benn 10-8, ducking, Benn 10-9, bobbing and weaving, Benn 10-9, parrying, Eubank 8-7, blocking 8-7, Benn, footwork 8-7, Benn, and clinching 10-9, Conor Benn. Taking all 4 categories together, 9.495 points for Chris Eubank Jr., and the algorithm says 8.533 points for Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system 10-9 Chris Eubank Jr. And as we take another look at the running score after 7, I have it 69-64 Chris Eubank Jr. Judge at ringside Lee Avery gave it to Eubank 10-9 and has it 69-64 as well. Judge Kieran McCann gave it to Conor Benn and has it 67-66 Eubank. And Judge Mark Bates gave that round to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9 and has it 68-65 Chris Eubank Jr. Again, the landed punches 36-12 in Eubank's favor, and the running total now 141 punches for Eubank Jr. cleanly landed, 72 for Conor Benn. Round 8, clean punching. And this is where Eubank Jr. finally breaks that 40 barrier with 42 clean landed punches for Eubank Jr. Look at the massive list here. Conor Benn had a great round with 27 clean landed punches. He was just outdone by a machine in this round. And therefore, clean punching, 10-9, Chris Eubank Jr. Effective aggression. Benn's extreme aggression was very effective in the first minute, although the effect was to make Eubank Jr. fight back just as aggressively and land triple the punch. Eubank Jr. was slightly less aggressive in the second minute, but did sustain aggression coming forward, while Benn had a big drop-off, perhaps tiring. Benn came alive with the aggressive forward movement in the third minute, landing many more of his punches as the two fighters went more punch for punch. The total punch disparity for the round was still large, but Benn closed the gap a lot toward the end of the round. In the first minute, both fighters were equal. Second minute, edge to Eubank Jr. Third minute, edge to Benn. And so all in all, effective aggression, I had to give 10 points to both men for both categories. Ring generalship. They were fighting at the pace and tone that Benn set for most of the round, although Eubank Jr. did an amazing job at it. Benn set the aggressive tone and fast pace, but Eubank Jr. was happy to engage and landed many more punches in the first 2 minutes. The second minute was Eubank Jr.'s pace and tone as he kept the tired Benn at bay with accurate punches. The third minute was a back and forth aggressive and efficient punching showcase for both fighters. Except for the last minute, Eubank Jr. was less tired and pushing the pace, but Benn forced his tone for more of the round when his burst of energy returned. Ring generalship, I gave control of action to Eubank and control of tone to Conor Benn. Let's talk defense. Lots of defense out of Chris Eubank Jr. in this round, but more from Conor Benn. You can see the elaborate list on your screen here. 10-8 to Conor Benn for high guard, ducking 10-9 Eubank, bobbing and weaving 10-8 Benn, parrying 7 points to both fighters, blocking 10-7 Benn, footwork 10-9 Benn, and clinching 10-9 Eubank. And if we have a look at the composite score of all 4 categories, 9.569 points to Chris Eubank Jr. to 9.440 points to Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system, 10-9 Chris Eubank Jr. Now, I will say this round and round 2 were very close. If you have any detailed analysis that you'd like to put in the comments to convince me why those 2 rounds should go the other way, round 2 and round 8 are the most arguable in my opinion. So as we take a look at the running score, once again, I now have it 79-73 Chris Eubank Jr. after giving him the round. Judge at ringside, Lee Every, gave the round to Conor Benn and has it now 78-74. Judge McCann gave the round to Eubank and has it 77-75 for Eubank. Mark Bates gave it to Conor Benn 10-9 and has the fight 77-75 Eubank. Again, the landed punches 42-27, which is one of the reasons why I edged toward Eubank here. That's a big disparity. The running total, 183 punches landed for Eubank Jr., 99 for Conor Benn. Round 9, clean punching. Again, these 2 lists couldn't be any more different from each other. Look at the size difference. Chris Eubank Jr. lands an astonishing 44 clean punches in round 9 to Conor Benn's 17, and that's enough to get a score of 10-8 for clean punching for Chris Eubank. Effective aggression. Benn was more effective in the first minute with aggressive energy, but Eubank Jr. punches him back to the ropes and unloads a barrage between 2:10 and 1:57 on the clock. Eubank Jr. bleeding substantially from the right eye in the second half of the round, likely due to an earlier accidental headbutt as Benn was rising from a duck. There have been 2 or 3 of these kinds of head clashes in the fight so far, except for a brief second where Benn pushed Eubank Jr. to the ropes when they were already positioned near there. Eubank Jr. was far more aggressive, coming forward and throwing a lot of punches for almost the whole round, even after the bleeding was getting in his eye. Everything Benn does offensively is energetic and aggressive, but he couldn't back up Eubank Jr. effectively or in any way cause him to slow down his barrage. So for effective aggression, I gave both categories to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9. Ring generalship. Eubank Jr. set a pace that Benn just couldn't contend with, and Benn ended up clinching a lot. He landed 27 more clean punches than Benn, backed him up, set an aggressive, unrelenting tone. Even with blood in his eye, was the one pressing forward and controlling the pace and tone for at least 80% of the round. Benn, to his credit, never gives up. When he found openings, he attacked just as hard as when he was fresh earlier, but there just weren't enough openings, and he was outgunned. Ring generalship and controlling action, 10-8 to Chris Eubank Jr. and 10-9 for controlling. Let's talk defense. And again, Benn with a lot of defense, as you can see on the screen here. Eubank Jr. no slouch either, but you can see the difference in how many defensive maneuvers done to successfully avoid punches that were done by each fighter in this round. High guard blocking 10-9 to Benn, ducking 10-9 to Benn, bobbing and weaving 10-9 to Benn, parrying 8-7 to Benn, blocking 9-7 to Benn, footwork 9-8 to Benn, and clinching 10-8 to Benn. Overall, a much more defensively robust round by Conor Benn, but it's because he was forced to have to respond defensively at what was coming at him, which to his credit, he did very well in many cases. Taking all 4 categories together, 9.629 points for Eubank Jr., 8.669 points for Conor Benn. If we normalize that to the 10-point must system for round 9, 10-9 Chris Eubank Jr. And as we have another look at that running score, we see I gave the round to Chris Eubank Jr. 10-9. My running score now 89-82 Chris Eubank Jr. And I noticed that 2 of the judges at ringside actually gave this round to Conor Benn. Perhaps they may have been distracted watching the Thumb Wars World Championships or something, because there's no way that Conor Benn won this round. He was outlanded 44-17. Total punch count, for those of you who care about that stat, 227 187 now for Eubank Jr., 116 for Conor Benn. So Lee Every somehow gave the round to Conor Benn, has it 87-84 Eubank. Judge McCann gave it to Eubank and has the same score, 87-84 Eubank. And then Judge Mark Bates gave it also to Conor Benn somehow and has the fight a 1-point difference, 86-85 Eubank Jr. Round 10, clean punching. Another 40 clean punch landed round for Eubank Jr. This is unbelievable. Look at the variety of punches that he landed. Again, Conor Benn no slouch with 19 clean landed punches. That's a good total, but not when the other guy's landing 40. And so therefore, clean punching 10-8 in favor of Eubank Jr. Effective aggression. The effective aggression disparity was huge in Eubank Jr.'s favor in the first minute. More energetic, pushing strongly forward, landing punches, and using forearms to the chest to push Benn back. Benn went nuts in a couple 10-second spurts in the second minute, but even then he missed a lot. Clinched to rest as he had done throughout the fight, and Eubank Jr. was still more consistently aggressive after showing a chink in his endurance for the first time for only a couple seconds. He seems to be able to compose himself and move forward aggressively no matter what is presented to him in the fight. The third minute was a war of aggressive attrition until the last 10 seconds, which were all Eubank Jr. I gave aggressiveness and effectiveness of that aggression 10-9 to Chris Eubank Jr. Ring generalship. Punches happened at the beginning of the round with the video way zoomed out, but I was able to zoom in and see that none landed cleanly. I noticed Eubank Jr.'s eye bleeding again with a minute to go, but he controlled the action and tone during the majority of the round. Benn had strong moments and landed great punches, but he fought in spurts and held in between, whereas Eubank Jr. was more consistently pushing the pace and controlling the tone for more of the round. I can see why some judges gave Benn this round. He did better than in most of the other rounds, but when you slow the footage down, you see that Eubank Jr. just did much more. And you can't award a round to somebody because they did better than their previous rounds. They need to actually win the round based on the criteria presented. Ring generalship, 10-9 in favor of Chris Eubank. Let's talk defense. Conor Benn slightly outdoes Eubank Jr. in defense in this round, but both of them with many defensive maneuvers that you can see outlined here, along with their timestamp. So as we judge defense, high guard, 8-7 Benn, ducking, 10-8 Benn, bobbing and weaving, 9-8 Benn, parrying, 8-7 Benn, blocking, 9-8 Benn, footwork, 10-8 Benn, and clinching, 10-9 Benn. Again, because I think he was put in a position where he had to defend a lot more than Eubank had to. But again, to his credit, Benn defends fairly well. Taking all four scoring criteria together, 9.571 points to Chris Eubank Jr. to 8.729 points to Conor Benn. And if we normalize that to the 10-point must system, 10-9 Eubank Jr. Having another look at the running score, I have it 99-91 Eubank Jr. Judge Lee Every gave the round to Conor Benn and has it 96-94 Eubank. Judge Kieran McCann gave it also to Conor Benn and has it 96-94 Eubank. Mark Bates gave it 10-9 correctly to Eubank Jr. and has the score 96-94 Eubank Jr. Again, the punch landed disparity 40-19 in favor of Eubank Jr. So not sure if the other two judges were watching the Tiddlywinks regional playoffs, but it is what it is. The running total, 267 total landed punches for Eubank Jr. to 135 for Conor. Round 11, clean punching. Now, how does a fighter peak in clean punches landed in the 11th round? An astounding 49 clean landed punches. Again, I'm not counting the glancing. So 49 clean landed punches to Eubank Jr. to, again, a very respectable 23 to Conor Benn. But when the other guy's landing 49, what can you do? So therefore, 10-8 for clean punching to Eubank Jr. Effective aggression. There was an aggressive back and forth near the end of the round where both fighters were equally effective and impactful, but the remainder of the round saw Eubank Jr. be much more relentless and busy with his forward pressing attack and many accurate punches. Benn, as he has throughout the fight, appears to be more tired and has to take breaks between aggressive bursts, even though he did a good job of trying to keep Eubank Jr. off of him in this round. Eubank Jr. is also tired, but didn't show it until the round was over. During the round, he was concentrated and unrelenting. Effective aggression and controlling aggressiveness and effectiveness of that aggression, 10-9, Chris Eubank Jr. Ring generalship. I think both fighters are fighting within the tone they are trying to set, which is aggressive and throwing many punches. However, the pace that Eubank Jr. set was too much for Benn to keep up with consistently. He fought hard in long spurts, but was also clinching for rests often. Maybe it's the size disparity, but Eubank Jr. just doesn't seem to be pushed off his position as often as Benn is when they go to war. Ring generalship, controlling of action, 10-9 to Eubank Jr. Controlling of tone, I gave 10 points to both men there. Let's talk defense. Eubank Jr. with a lot of defensive maneuvers, but Benn with more defensive maneuvers. So in judging each category, high guard, 8-7 Benn, ducking, 10-8 Eubank, bobbing and weaving, 10-8 Benn, parrying, 7 points to both men, blocking, 10-9 Benn, footwork, 9-7 Eubank, and clinching, 10-8 Conor Benn. As we take the four scoring criteria together, 9.657 points for Chris Eubank Jr. to 8.731 points to Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system, 10-9 Eubank Jr. And as we have another look at the running score, I now have the score 109 to 100 Eubank Jr. Judge at ringside Lee Every, Kieran McCann, and Mark Bates all gave the round to Eubank Jr. correctly this time. Judge Every has it 106-103, Judge McCann 106-103, Judge Bates 106-103. Again, the landed punches 49 to 23 in that round, the running total 316 to Eubank Jr., 158 for Conor Benn. Round 12, the final round. Clean punching. Again, a huge disparity. Eubank Jr. almost another 40-punch round, ends up with 39 clean-landed punches in the last round of the fight. Unbelievable. Conor Benn with 18. All of these punches outlined here for your viewing pleasure, and the scoring 10-8 in favor of Chris Eubank Jr. for clean punching. Effective aggression. Quite a few head clashes in this round. Eubank was the more effective aggressor in the first minute. Ben was fighting hard against the violent barrage, but Eubank Jr. was moving violently forward and backed Ben all the way to the ropes while landing many punches. The second minute saw Ben come after Eubank Jr. aggressively, but he wasn't able to move him off the center of the ring, as Eubank had done to him. Then Eubank Jr. turned into a human buzzsaw, basically mauling Ben for most of the second minute. Ben is a very skilled fighter who is just fighting hard against someone with more weapons, who is undeterred by what talent Ben is offering. Effective aggression, aggressiveness, and effectiveness, 10-9 Eubank Jr. Ring generalship. Ben fought bravely and tried to overcome with lots of defensive movement, good hard punches, and holding and clinching to try to slow Eubank Jr. down, but almost the whole round was Eubank Jr. pushing a hard, aggressive pace that put Ben on the defensive and unable to implement any plan. Ring generalship for controlling action and tone, both 10-9 to Eubank Jr. Let's talk defense. A modicum of defense from Chris Eubank and a whole lot of defense going on for Conor Benn, and that's because he was trying to avoid the barrage that was coming at him. If we look at each of the categories, high guard 10-8 Ben, ducking 10-9 Ben, bobbing and weaving 10-8 Ben, parrying 7 points to both men, neither parried, blocking 10-8 Ben, footwork 10-7 Ben, clinching 10-9 Conor Benn. And so if we take the four categories together, 9.6 points to Chris Eubank Jr., 8.814 points to Conor Benn, normalizing to the 10-point must system, 10-9 Chris Eubank Jr. in the final round. And so the time has come to determine who really won, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. Let's reveal who the real winner was and what the real score should have been in this fight. And it's Chris Eubank Jr. 119 to 109. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's two rounds that were close. I really feel like I have him scored right. I guess I probably could be convinced to give him to Ben. So at best, this fight was 117-111, meaning that all three judges got it wrong, at least by a point and probably by 3 points. All three judges ended up with 116-112 as the final score after giving the last round, all of them, to Chris Eubank Jr. So let's take a look at the punch disparity, 39-18 in the last round, and the running total, Chris Eubank Jr. ends up landing 355 clean punches to Conor Benn's 176. Cumulative totals don't matter for scoring individual rounds and the proper way to score a boxing match, but if we take a look at the average, it's literally double. Chris Eubank Jr. averaged about 30 clean landed punches per round. That's a lot to Ben's 15, literally double. And so in summary, I just want to say a couple things. One, individual rounds can be close without a fight being close. There's no argument to be made on who won this fight. The number of rounds that were definitely won by Eubank Jr. when slowing it down is too decisive. Just because Ben did better in some rounds does not mean he won them when judged on the accepted 4 criteria. Ben won really one round convincingly. Eubank Jr. won many rounds convincing. The infographic during the fight showing the closeness of power punches landed is meaningless. The actual criterion is clean punches landed regardless of type, and Eubank Jr. just had a far wider array of ways to land them. Stiff jabs, legal punches in the clinch while Ben was resting, plenty of body work, and aggressive punching even when Ben was attacking, whereas Ben was doing an amazing defensive job, but in an effort to avoid damage more than fighting fire with fire in most cases. The next thing I would say is Ben tried hard. Boy, does he have a lot of determination. Eubank Jr. just has more tools. And so all that being said, I want to admit, it's close to impossible to see this in real speed. This looked like a totally different fight, much closer in fact, when I watched in real speed in order to judge effective aggression, as opposed to when I watched in 25% slow motion to catch clean-landed punches in defense. So I can appreciate the difficulty judges have in judging a fight, especially with fighters this fast, especially Conor Benn. He's unbelievably fast. You wanted the real answer. It's 100% necessary to get to the truth, and now you know who really won, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. So there it is, round by round, frame by frame, scored by the book. Conor Benn brought pressure, speed, and smart aggression, but Chris Eubank Jr. landed the cleaner shots, a lot more of them, controlled the pace, and dominated more rounds than the judges gave him credit for. This wasn't just a win, it was a clear win. If you agree or disagree, drop your scorecard in the comments. I read every one. Hit like if you respect real boxing breakdowns, subscribe if you want to continue to find out the truth about who won boxing's most controversial decisions. If you like this level of analysis and you want to see it for another fight, or you even want to learn more about my scoring mechanism and how I weight different categories, click on the images at the top of your screen right here.